All right, so we got a PvP here. Not surprising, another one. In the bottom right, it is ShoWTimE. In the top left, it is Shadown. But I will take directly into another match, more than waiting for a potentially better one. Future versus Raynor could have been interesting, because Raynor's probably playing random again, but... oh well. So the winner of this will face Max Packs. So it could be PvP, PvP all day long. I do hold ShoWTimE's PvP in high regard. I do believe he is the second best Protoss in Europe. Certainly their first best representative when it comes to actually appearing in international tournaments, as Max Packs does not, but... ShoWTimE, not just second best kind of all around, right? But also, I would say, second best when it does come to PvP, if not occasionally the best. He has gotten the better of Max Packs plenty of times in the last year. There was a time where Max Packs was truly invulnerable, but that has been a long time at this point, like a long time ago. So for the entirety of the last year, I would say ShoWTimE has been giving as good as he gets. But then the regionals, it looked like ShoWTimE really had figured out something that Max Packs had not. That Max Packs hadn't really gotten to practice a lot or encounter a lot. So even though it was a contested series, they did ultimately go the way of ShoWTimE. And it was not a great series. I wouldn't recommend going to watch it. I don't think PvP is moving towards that, but the point is that ShoWTimE has definitely shown prowess in the matchup across all metas and across all styles. And even still shows a little bit of the improvement when it comes to less played forms of PvP. So the Stargate v Stargate. Ooh, Shadown missing another chance to, you know, technically get a block there, an extra second or two. But ShoWTimE did get the Zealot, so it was a matter of time before that was going to get cleared out. Shadown opted to go for a 2 gateway opener. But then by just forgoing on his actual production, he didn't really build a lot of units, just a single Adept here. Then he can go ahead and get a Nexus pretty much the same time as his opponent. Seconds difference here, not going to matter very much. So he's not going to have the ability to be aggressive, but the ability to be aggressive might not have been worth very much anyway. As you can see, if he had gotten 2 Adepts, Shield Battery blocks him out. 2 Stalkers, Shield Battery also would have been built, so there's that. And so you're not going to do that anyway. If you're not going to have any repercussions by not having units, then you also get free Nexus. And there's no repercussions for not having a lot of units for Shadown, because ShoWTimE clearly doesn't have a lot of production himself. So, I mean, Shadown is going to be ahead on the... no, he's actually not ahead on anything. I'm getting confused here. All right, so we got ShoWTimE opting for the Stargate first, which of course Shadown knows. Oracle as well, then into the Twilight Council pretty much immediately after that. Shadown is grabbing Oracle as well into Phoenix, which is a little late, but a shield battery is available, so it's okay. And then the Twilight Council, and his Twilight Council is just straight up later. So ShoWTimE is leading this PvP. He's making the decisions first, and that does go pretty far, but he has managed to fall behind a little bit on the probe, so maybe a chrono not given, or production cycle not given, I don't know exactly, but ooh, this is important. No shield battery. ShoWTimE saves his Oracle, oh geez. And so does Shadown. Alright, so both of them save their Oracles. And 2 probe losses doesn't sound like a lot, and I guess overall it might not be, but then ShoWTimE was again already a little behind on the worker count, so now it's a 3 worker deficit. And actually, even though ShoWTimE got a much faster Twilight Council, their blinks are starting simultaneously. Shadown also now in the driver's seat, taking the 3rd base faster, which I again think is very appropriate. ShoWTimE is investing more so into, well, units and gateway and gas, and basically everything coming out first is not the Nexus, where ShoWTimE Shadown is going for Nexus, then getting the other stuff, then getting the gateway, then getting the gas, then getting maybe additional soccer warp-ins. I mean, we're talking about little bits of differences here. But ShoWTimE, he got a Zealot, Shadown got a Adept. They both got around the same stalker number, but then ShoWTimE was forced to warp in another one because of the Oracle appearing without a shield battery. And that single stalker addition might have also offset a lot of other things, and then he goes for the gateway and the gas, so his third Nexus is even later. I mean, it's really... I feel like this type of PvP setup where both players aren't just like throwing the sledgehammer, you know, like, well, I'm gonna proxy robo you! And they're more like, well, here, you know, well, it's kind of like watching people just dodge and weave the entire time. It does come down a lot to who has confidence. Appropriate scouting as well, which means the Oracle is very important. But confidence, too, to say, well, I think I can get away with this so that I'll be better off in 5 minutes, but I might be vulnerable right now. But am I vulnerable right now because the other guy's really not getting a whole lot that actually hits me in the face like a sledgehammer? So if I'm not vulnerable, then shouldn't I just go ahead and grab that third Nexus? And then maybe you make a mistake and you don't realize, oh, that they actually added 4 gateways and they're not going for their own third Nexus. But this wasn't damn. I cannot get the cadence down for both of these names. This is surprisingly hard. ShoWTimE did not go for additional gateways. His stasis trap was just perfectly placed. Shadown blinking forward into the stasis trap also means he doesn't have a blink to retreat. Nice use of the Phoenix coming through as well. ShoWTimE grabbing everything he can from that engagement, giving him a 10 army supply lead. Now Shadown has more workers, although the Oracle is coming in here to try and take that away. And he still will. And he's also grabbing, once again, a faster Nexus. But ShoWTimE did just take the battle there. At least has a faster +1 by a little bit. And perhaps a little more production as well coming out first. But that is, again, not the consequence of not having a similarly timed 4th Nexus. Which, you know, can add up. I would actually say that probably is not the biggest of deals. Like, obviously, being behind the entire Nexus for 3 minutes is eventually going to cause problems. But I would say right now, Shadown grabbing this faster 4th, even if it were to complete, which apparently it's not, I don't think is actually the biggest boon. But, well, there you go. It's not even going to complete, so absolutely not going to be a big leap forward for Shadown, who really was the one forced to respect ShoWTimE's position after losing the fight in the middle of the map. Now, pretty quickly pushes away the Stalkers and does get the 4th Nexus down. So as far as the 4th Nexus go, they really are quite similar. No one's getting a lead off of that. Over the course of this game, Shadown has mined more. We can look at the income graph to make sure that I'm not a liar, I'm not stupid, he really has been, but as opposed to being maybe jumping up to +1,000 or +1,200, it's jumped up and it's spiked truly up to 600, otherwise been average maybe like 200 more per minute. That's not the biggest of deals, and if you do take consistently better battles, then you totally make up for that. So in this case, 1,000 resource difference very early on in the game, very few trades. Still, the point is ShoWTimE can continue taking better trades and make up for what is ultimately a very small deficit because there was no sledgehammer. This was all just like little tiny attempts to get a little bit farther ahead that could have snowballed in a very pristine PvP. One thing leads to another. Could have, but, you know, didn't happen here because Shadown, well, stopped dead in his tracks in the midpoint of the map. Now we're back at that point watching DTs walk along. I don't know if ShoWTimE actually noticed. I don't believe he did. He does still have his Oracle, but it's on the other side of the map right now, and he's distracted by a potential battle on his 4th. DTs in the natural and the 3rd base, killing a lot of probes. Even if they do get detected eventually, this is going to cause a lot of problems for ShoWTimE, who is forced to flee, to go back there, to produce, to recall, to get his Stalkers in position, to give up his 4th base. He just cannot do that and defend against the DTs at the same time. The Oracle, I think, is taking care of one DT, but the second one trying to escape is causing further problems. I mean, the Stalkers, again, they're not defending anything on this high ground. Shadown gets an entire 4th base and a handful of probes just from the 4th base, too. The DTs probably killed 15, honestly. They did a lot of damage, but then there were also probes dying on the 4th. So the 1-2 punch was pretty much perfect, but instead of just being like a jab haymaker, they were both haymakers, the DTs and the main attack, both getting a lot of damage done. So ShoWTimE falling very far behind, down 30 supply, 10 in workers, 20 in army. He does have the upgrade, so he can take solace in that for a while yet. +2 is a good place to be if you're hard locked on upgrades, I suppose. But he is going to try and push through, get that +3. It's quite expensive for the guy in his position. Look how much he's not being able to fill up his army supply, but hoping that Defender's Advantage will kick in and make up for that, and ultimately grabbing that +3 will reward him in 3 minutes. Unfortunately, Shadown, with a 30 army supply advantage and 2-1 finishing, he got that second forge at some point, is still going to be coming in here with a potential killing blow. 40 armor supply difference. Shadown does not have a Warp Prism. The only thing, perhaps, that ShoWTimE can use to stay alive. We got stasis traps, we got shield batteries, we got cannons. There's a chance. And the stasis trap is good. Once again, Shadown just walking into these stasis traps, man. Really nice of ShoWTimE to also take that opportunity. So he pushes forward when the stalkers get trapped because, you know, he knows I have a good chance of actually having more units. But then he also takes the opportunity to start taking off these zealots. If you can get the stalkers in a position where they can blink reflexively against zealots, then the zealots feel almost useless. It's a waste of minerals. The zealots just run face first into their death. It's going to be different, when the zealots actually get involved and are swiping left and right as the battle ensues. ShoWTimE has actually split up his army, unbeknownst to Shadown, I'm pretty sure. I don't think he's seen anything in the middle of the map. Now, this is a real gamble. You know, it's a lot of stalkers not involved in the defense, but ShoWTimE actually is even expecting, I guess. It's not so much that he split up his army thinking to do something with it, as much as he's expecting Shadown to try and start to multi-prong attack. That is not Shadown's plan right now. Shadown is just moving the blob of stalkers around to try and find this opening. At this point, it is quite difficult to tell who has more units, but I think ShoWTimE, with Defender's Advantage, is still mostly hanging on to that. It's 50 stalkers to 50 stalker, actually. ShoWTimE has actually caught up in the army supply. It was a 40 supply difference when Shadown was moving around this left side. Now it is only an 8 supply difference, as that little squad of stalkers initially used defensively did just force a recall. Shadown does recall more stalkers to the top side, so ShoWTimE has to respond with his own warpings, and the back and forth do continue. Shadown has still managed to grab leads, of course, so even though he wasn't able to kill ShoWTimE right then and there, Shadown has still gotten a 5th base lead. Wait. I mean, he did get that faster, didn't he? ShoWTimE's pretty much on par, though, just as far as the actual... Yeah! No, actually, Shadown and ShoWTimE's 5th base come down at the exact same time. Yeah, Shadown may be missing an opportunity. Maybe he should have multi-pronged. Moving the blob across the 3rd and 4th really didn't work out here for Shadown. He's missed the opportunity to stem his opponent's economy. And while his upgrades are still, well, potentially better, they're not better right now, actually. ShoWTimE with a +3 attack finishing up, and Shadown's upgrades not yet done, plus a couple of zealots warping in on the top right. ShoWTimE is starting to take some battles once again. A 3,000 resource difference favoring our red Protoss, as he also finally takes advantage in the economy. Slightly more workers here as they both settle on 5 bases. ShoWTimE even reaching toward a 6th as that battle went down. Shadown actually not even seeing that. The battle ended before the probe appeared. Dark Shroud on the way now for ShoWTimE, who was really popped by it earlier on. I thought really that was going to be the 1, 2, 3. I thought Shadown was going to win, but Shadown trying to force the issue with a main engagement, never actually pulling the trigger, has perhaps lost him that lead. He does have a bank lead, so his economy was better for a while again, but it's not that big of a bank lead. And ShoWTimE is consistently taking better battles. I don't know. 3-2 is done now for Shadown, though, so he has a 2 upgrade advantage. That is problematic. But stasis traps once again. ShoWTimE, Jesus. Base trade territory. All right, then. Both players getting a Nexus killed. ShoWTimE is trying to actually make a stand a little bit, but he just simply does not have the units, yeah. Has to back away. Main base under attack. Revelation in effect, but the DTs will get recalled out. Both supplies looking quite strong despite the chaos. And usually one person having DTs is in a much better position as far as the base trade goes than the other, but in this case, they didn't add a lot. Shadown was using them kind of defensively initially, but Observer appeared for ShoWTimE, then using them offensively, forced to recall them. Didn't add up to a whole lot. ShoWTimE never using his own Dark Shrine. Did manage to at least get the trade on the Nexus, and then while it was happening, his own 6th base was finishing, so he still remains at an even Nexus count, or even ahead, actually, as he is on 5 Nexus, going on to 6 still, and Shadown was only ever at that 5 after losing his 3rd. So the upgrades will continue forth. We'll be paying attention to that as the battles continue as well. Army supply is quite similar, but ShoWTimE currently in the lead. And nothing's really changing as far as the composition, so we're trying to add in any Archons, only a little amount of Zealots trying to come in as well, because again, if you do get that unideal situation with the Zealots, then they just run face first into a blob of 50 Stalkers. The Zealots will be almost useless. They will not look very good. So you got to be careful about that. The Stalkers are actually pursuing for ShoWTimE. He thinks there might be an opportunity. I'm not sure that's actually true. He's still ultimately behind 2 upgrades and a very sustained battle as well. I mean, we're not talking about Disruptors totally negating upgrades. When it comes to these upgrades, especially the armor, I mean, the Zealots of Shadown will actually have a chance to race up to the Stalkers as opposed to just bleeding out. But once again, stasis traps causing problems for Shadown. He's losing 10 to 20 armor supply with all these stasis traps. He's losing positioning with these stasis traps. They're acting as a pseudo force field in a lot of these engagements. The stasis traps are getting Sideshow Bob Rake kind of levels right now. The DTs that were saved earlier on try to come in for a blow to the 3rd base of ShoWTimE. Doesn't really work out. They do manage to kill a couple of stack defense and a couple of probes, but then ultimately losing their lives. Probably not worth it. Shadown is not rich and certainly not on the gas counts as ShoWTimE once again entering on the Shadown side of the map without Shadown realizing. Now Shadown loses a Robo, Gateways, his Forge could be in trouble. ShoWTimE must know the army's coming over to engage, and he actually is chasing the army. We could have a pseudo surround right now, something that Shadown is also wary of. We got recalls coming by for, I think, both players, as ShoWTimE will evacuate towards the left side, but then at the same time still pressuring on the right side, still controlling the map and having Shadown chase him around. Inevitably, mistakes will be made on the micro. As you can see, ShoWTimE's AI not working with him. Another Nexus is in ShoWTimE's sights as Shadown tries to respond. Lickety split. 12 probes have already fallen, but both players, around 55, are even on that score. More units getting torn down too, as ShoWTimE unable to blink those Zealots back. Shadown only down 4 probes, still having the Nexus up and running. ShoWTimE about to lose that additional Nexus he built earlier, but he's actually got a bottom left base now, so still retaining the Nexus lead, or now it's completely even? It is completely even once again. 5v5, both players with relatively new 5th bases as well. Shadown having a much bigger mineral bank, but ShoWTimE having that more crucial resource of the gas in his back pocket. He has been fighting uphill against the upgrade deficit, and I think that has appeared in some of these battles, but oh my god, keeping track of these things and trying to use the correct pronunciation for both players consistently is a real workout, I gotta say. Stalkers on either side of Shadown's army sometimes looks like a good surround. That time, not so much. ShoWTimE coming in with a very awkward battle as his Zealots were also trapped behind the Stalkers, and now Shadown is the one going for the actual surround, the very intentional surround. And finally, after 18 minutes of back and forth action, we do have Shadown take game number 1. Boy howdy. Shadown, ShoWTimE, ShoWTimE, Showdown. It's, that was training with weights. Thank you, Julian HG2G, for the 2 months. Much appreciated. Game 2 is going to be on Hecate in the bottom left, down 1 game. He is ShoWTimE. In the top right, eventually winning that game, it is Platinum Hero Shadown. He got the lead in the very beginning, and kind of lost it a little bit, and then kind of gained it back, and then kind of lost it, and then kind of gained it back. It was very, very difficult to track who was definitively ahead or behind, especially to such small degrees as that game went on. But one thing I do know, Shadown was ahead, and then he got stasis trapped, and then he wasn't as ahead anymore. And so that led us to an 18.5-minute game in which both players were pretty much neck and neck. Shadown, I think, eventually upgrades played very well into his hand. The battles, as they got especially to smaller and smaller skirmishes, less and less pre-planned and I want to say intelligent, but that's obviously a weird word to use. Like, the battles were getting more erratic. They were not planned. And so when that happens, obviously having 2 armor to help out your stalkers when you're not necessarily paying attention to them, or certainly your zealots, which are the best unit to not pay attention to, is incredible. And then when it comes to an actual fight, if you do force your opponent to stay in fight, well, then clearly having better upgrades is just better. Doi. But then the other part was absolutely that he finally got ShoWTimE to be forced to stand and fight. ShoWTimE was playing the runaround game, perhaps, yeah, desperately, because he realized how big the deficit of the upgrades were, and that he was having trouble catching up because he didn't have his own double forge for shields and armor. Might have been, you know, kind of desperately doing the whole, like, just kind of throwing his arms around. But he did it with style, and I think he was doing it as intelligently as possible up until that very final point, in which he thought he was catching a small subsection of Shadown's army, but actually was just getting put into an unideal position to fight, so that he ultimately got surrounded, really. And it really was the worst possible fight. Out-upgraded, Stalkers weren't in a good concave, Zealots are trapped behind the Stalkers. One of the worst fights possible for ShoWTimE. But that's what ended the game, and quite decisively, too. So now we get into a fresh PvP in which both players are opting for the high ground 2 gateway. That's what started the difference in the first game. Shadown goes for the faster Nexus. ShoWTimE, well, not going for a Nexus, is he? He's going for a Robo. So ShoWTimE is still, to this day, not the cheesiest player. Even though he has gone through phases, he certainly practiced cheeses in all lanes, and it is PvP, and anyone can do anything. But he still wouldn't be expected to do this. A 1-base, 3-gate Robo when he's down a game. It's like a parting play or a mono play or something. So Shadown might be completely gobsmacked by this. He does not know what his opponent is doing. He has not been tipped off as quickly as Mono was tipping off Skillus in our last series, because the Robo's back at home, that proxied. But he has been tipped off. There's a lack of intention to get your Nexus up and running. So Shadown should be wary. The 2 Adepts constantly just scouting. Good block there from Shadown. You know, for ShoWTimE, he knows his opponent's grabbing a Nexus, but seeing what units pop out, and if he could get into the main base, obviously that'd be great too. Can be good information, good intel. It is Blink for Shadown, which will not be done when the first attack happens. When the Immortal and the War Prism show up, Blink will not be done. But then it'll be, what, like 60-70% done? And if Blink finishes while Shadown still has a good number of Stalkers, and that is the trick, retaining your Stalkers while under that pressure, the Blink will be massive. Blinking on top of the War Prism, blinking on top of the Immortal, blinking reflexively to help defend, all good things. Not a good thing for Shadown is his lack of warp shield battery. So that's a little, maybe he actually wasn't aware of ShoWTimE doing this. I don't think he's going to have Stalkers. The Adept numbers are also now a problem. Shadown just completely unaware of the move out, completely unaware of the actual build of ShoWTimE, and, well, yeah, he's dead. 50 dead. Yeah, I thought he was aware, but that must have been very early on. And he never got a scout back in. Because if he was at all suspicious, a shield battery should have been in the natural. So that was my bad. I thought he knew to be at least scared, but he did not. He's completely blindsided. Which was exactly what ShoWTimE was hoping for. It was game before that depowering. GG. ShoWTimE with a quick clapback there. And now we're quickly tied up 1-1 onto Oceanborn. Top left ShoWTimE, bottom right Shadown. Shadown just clearly had no idea. No shield battery in the natural is a sign of someone who was completely oblivious, but then also was willing to be a little greedy. Because even if you're pretty sure ShoWTimE would do the exact same thing as you, Nexus and the Twilight Council for Blink, there's always that chance that they might warp in more than you. So while you hold on to a warp in to build probes or something, they warp into additional stalkers. And so a shield battery could happen, or there's always a chance that they can actually play, you know, something different, like a Robo. And that is what happened. So then the shield battery is just that first step that you take forward into defense. And it's a fairly light step forward, too. One shield battery probably would not have saved his life, because then if he's still gobsmacked by the presence of an army on his side of the map, that shield battery isn't properly protected. They get sniped. The stalkers are doing exactly what they did in the last game, which is just retreating back to the mineral line. But still. So Shadown did leave the base of his opponent pretty much immediately is when you would expect a probe to. So he didn't do anything wrong. It's just that he didn't go back to scout, which maybe he would have done if it was a mana or someone who is more prone to doing that type of cheese. So, yeah. He just was like, oh, 2-gate. He's going to get a Nexus. His third pylon's going to go on the low ground. We're Gucci. Did not go back in. So Shadown, he gets bopped, and that happens at PvP. It's going to go for a proxy pylon of his own, but that is a fake one. It's not even proxied. It's just out there. So ShoWTimE's the one who's going to have to respond first. Have to be concerned first. And since it's going to take him a long time, if he even finds his pylon, to find the pylon, he's not going to know what he can do. If he scouts this pylon out in the middle of nowhere with no building attached to it, that's good enough. You go on with your day. But he's not going to know. So both players grabbing stalkers so far. ShoWTimE is grabbing a third pylon on the low ground. So this is what Shadown might have done last game if he was more suspicious of his opponent. Was to try and get back in and see the pylon and not just the units, which is what Shadown did. He put a pylon down probably to see the units. If he even did that, that might have been ShoWTimE's pylon to block him out from the main base. In fact, it probably was. So, the probe does die, unfortunately. A little mistimed on that one, but rest in peace, friendo, little robot. Shadown still holds on to a slight worker lead. Very, very unimportant. It's going to be a Twilight Council for Shadown on one base. So even though he didn't use that pylon for anything, he is still being a little cheeky. ShoWTimE, realizing he was going to be surrounded, does get a recall in to save the stalker, although it does take a lot of damage, and he is suspicious. Shield battery is going down for ShoWTimE, as he realizes his opponent's Nexus is way farther away from his own. What are you doing, buddy? What's going on? The Nexus does come down, but certainly after a lot of tech investment. We have a Twilight Council and a Dark Shrine, which ShoWTimE might be a little suspicious of. If you are thinking that everything is hunky-dory or that you're going to go on into a continued two-base game at the very least, Twilight Council is generally the way to go. That's the meta, the bread and butter, what you want to get into if the game is going normally. But anything else, they are one-basing you. They could be going for a Dark Shrine. They could be going for a Blink All-In, whatever. Then a Robo is going to be very helpful. And so a Robo ShoWTimE has. Immortal's coming out first, which is not actually what he needs. He doesn't know. He's trying to get a scout. He does not know. All he knows is that his opponent is, in fact, expanding. So it's not an all-in, which is still good information. But what else could it be? An observer should be queued up right behind this, and exactly it is ShoWTimE. I think timing-wise is totally okay. There is a proxy pylon, a true proxy pylon at this point for Shadown, but the DTs have to warp in slowly, and the observer will be pretty perfectly timed. Yeah, Chrono going into it as well. Blue Sand Phoenix is going to scout the Dark Shrine as the DTs make an appearance. And the observer is, oh, like I said, perfectly timed. Oh, he misses the force field! Ha! Ha! You gotta take that to make yourself feel better, because I would have missed the force field too. This is why I didn't want to play Protoss back in the day. I play a decent amount of Protoss now, but one of the big reasons I didn't was that I never wanted to actually learn how to use force fields. I was like, nah, it's too different. Give me Terran. Give me a Stim A move. Anyway, so the DTs survive, and that's pretty good. That's actually very important. 2 DTs immediately getting bopped is just so incredibly wasteful. So useless. But at least turning into an Archon is helpful. Defensively, offensively, I think can take a lot of punches. It's not gonna add, I would say, a lot in this game, just guessing, but it could, as opposed to straight up 2 dead DTs. And ShoWTimE doesn't know it's an Archon. So ShoWTimE has to worry about a DT slipping by him in the natural. So I felt the need to get 2 observers. He's going to be even shyer about moving out, but I think he wouldn't move out anyway because he doesn't have Blink. But just an example, this is why DTs are annoying. ShoWTimE did manage to defend the early game. That's great. That's awesome. But he does now have a type of composition that's not very... It's not very control-y, is it? It's not a controller composition. You basically defend with this. You either... almost all in with it. You try and make your way across the map without losing too many units to the Blink Stalkers, and you try to win with it. Or you just defend with it. And if, for instance, Shadown had gotten a slight edge the first time ShoWTimE tried to take this third base, and that third base kept on being denied, that would be exactly what a Blink Stalker player would hope for. Because ShoWTimE gets his third Nexus even faster than Shadown, the fact that his Blink is so much later hasn't really caused him any problems. He will eventually get Blink. He will eventually be allowed on the map. He will eventually get cannons to ward away those DTs. And he will then have 2 Observers, 2 Immortals, and a little bit of an economy lead, and a little tiny bit of a +1 lead. So good news for ShoWTimE. Shadown, certainly not out of it yet. He's going into charge much faster than ShoWTimE, and that charge giving him a lot of mobility. Also a bit of a one-punch potential if you wanted to all in here on 3 bases and just try and warp in too many Zealots for the Stalker Immortal defense to hold up to. It could be done. It could be done. Not the most common thing, though. Certainly I would expect more so going into +2 and then going into a 4th base, which does seem that Shadown might be planning more so. But if you can at least threaten, again, deny your opponent's other base, well, then you can get ahead, just like Shadown did in the first game. There it is again. ShoWTimE, Shadown. Templar Archives on the way for ShoWTimE, who wants the ability to add in his own Archons. It's very likely that we don't even see many Archons in the game here. Because if you think back to Game 1, I'm not sure we got a single Archon. Even with the DTs. There's no save on DTs in Archon even. There's just literally none. Because eventually those Archons also have a problem as far as the range goes. They try and chase after an army with the T-Rex arms. The Stalkers just focus fire them and blink away. So, but one thing Archons are really necessary for is for someone who's trying to overwhelm you with Zealots, which is that thing that I was saying Shadown could try and do. It's not actually what he's going to do here. You can see no Warp Prism. Oh, the Warp Prism. Yeah, no Warp Prism. That was an Archon. Just kidding. So this isn't really dedicated, but ShoWTimE thought it might be, so I think those Stalkers were literally sharking around for the Warp Prism. Instead found an Archon, injured it. Now Shadown on the retreat as he loses his Immortal. He could make a stand, maybe, on the choke a little bit more. Yeah. But, yeah, they both actually see each other's armies as being strong enough. And they both disengage. +2 on the way for both parties. DT Blink on the way for Shadown, who is going into ultimately still a more mobile composition. ShoWTimE did add in a lot of Zealots. He did add in a couple of Archons. He actually really hasn't added in many Stalkers at all. In fact, at this point, I would say that ShoWTimE is literally just not going into Stalkers. He is decisively... obviously a decision. He got Blink and went, you know what, never mind. He's going into Charge Lot Immortal Archon. Now, this composition falters against a very active Stalker player. It gets picked off as it defends. It gets picked off as it traverses across the map. But if it can go across the map and catch Shadown's Stalker army just bunched up against his own SimCity, this is going to hit like a truck. This is very old school PvP, even doing the +2 attack. Shadown doesn't realize it. I don't think he realizes this. Like, this is a huge problem for him. I think trying to get 1 or 2 more Archons, DT Archons, would be really the play if he knew there was mass charge lot. But he only has 1 Archon. Is that going to be enough? He will have a shield battery to back. No, not on his 3rd base. Just kidding. But on the 4th base he did. But now he's out of position. He doesn't know where his opponent's army is. And so now he has to just give up the 4th base, I'm pretty sure. Maybe not. Weird. What the hell was going on there? That was weird. Shadown just moving. He wasn't A-moving. He just moved his army right there. That'll do it. See, I think he actually could have sacrificed his 4th base for the greater good. But then he just lost so many units regular moving into ShoWTimE's army. Not sure exactly what he was going for there, but clearly a misclick of some sort. And ShoWTimE's going to win. The Zealots are running a little bit low. This is where the mass amount of Stalkers can start to really show their micro ability, but in come more reinforcements, and up against the wall, Shadown still is. So the room to micro is limited, and that's when the Immortals and Archons will actually get in the face of those Stalkers and pack a punch. Unfortunately, despite a really fantastic game number 1, it is going to be ShoWTimE who moves on. Shadown cannot take down the powerhouse Protoss, as much as he does try. And, I mean, he already didn't start things off super great, I would say, not tracking the army a little bit more when it moved across the map, and then he literally lost track of the army. That's why he was late to defending his 4th. That is a good blink forward, though. Hold on. Hold on. All right. Game's not quite over yet. But then, yeah, that move, that weird move. I don't know what that was. It was, I mean, he might be trying to kill an observer, actually. I think that might have been it, because the observer was moved away. Very unfortunate. But anyway, so you saw the power of Shadown's very microable Stalker army at the very end there. It called the numbers of ShoWTimE Zealots to a point where it could just individually micro against the Archon, the Immortals. The Stalker numbers are obviously bigger for Shadown. But ShoWTimE did not stay on Charge Lot Immortal Archon, which I think does start to fall off a little bit. This has been the meta of PvP. Blink Stalker versus Blink Stalker, and there's a lot of reasons for that. Every game leads to Blink Stalker. All roads lead to Rome, blah, blah, blah. And so ShoWTimE, by not just doubling down on the same composition, isn't going to double down on the same weaknesses of the composition as he is forced back, as he does get forced to retreat. He is now going to have an equal or greater number of Stalkers, which he has better and better Zealot numbers, and eventually will have better upgrades. In fact, right now, +3 attackers, +2. So Shadown might have leveled the supply for literally 1 second. Didn't last very long. GG. ShoWTimE will win 2-1 and move on to face Max Specs.